Now am I on? Okay, let's try it again. This calls to order the Monday, November 29th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from the meeting held on October 25th, 2021. Are there any comments on the minutes? Or a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next item of business is item 2, old business. There is none. Item 3, new business. Item A, site plan for pool and exception request to the green space requirements for 5638 Mission Road, Fairway, Kansas, as submitted by Barrett Kroll, Urban Prairie Architectural Collaborative, on behalf of Adam and Sarah Stein, property owners. Basil, do you have a staff report to share with us?
Yes, I do have the staff report. Background on this application, they submitted the application, I think, September, but there was an issue regarding the sewer line, main sewer line, and they did a review, and that came up to be fine, so they did apply again. The issue is, I mean, they are exceeding the total, the hardscape, by 2595. They are proposing a detention basin. So, I mean, staff is opposing. The courtyard got a special use permit a few years ago, 2019. So, I mean, our recommendation is, I mean, we do not support the exception for the green space just because it exceeds the square footage. But, I mean, with the proposed detention basin, that'll be up to the commissioners.
Okay.
Chair, if I might add, since Basil wasn't here when the special use permit was granted for the sport court, you know, on this report, I probably put a little influence on the staff recommendation as not being supportive, and I know planning definitely wants to know when staff is or isn't, what is the reasoning behind it. The sport court just came through in 2019, and so the code has not changed since then on hardscape green space calculation requirements. It is a property that has over 30,000 square feet, and you know, there's not a lot of those. Perhaps that's something planning wants to look at again, but the reason staff wasn't supportive was there's been no change in the code or anything since the sport court was granted.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Have you figured what the percentage of green space would be if it were figured over the whole lot?
Yeah, we have the number. I mean, it will be 68%.
Okay.
Wait, say that again?
It's at 68, I mean,
Oh, it would just
percent.
be 68% times
Yeah.
36,771
Yeah.
is what you're saying. Because isn't it, and I guess it's written here, I just haven't read it in the last few minutes, but isn't it taxed higher, the additional 10,000 square feet has a higher percentage applied to it?
Yes,
Not the entire lot.
100%.
Yeah, the 30,000, over 30,000 is 100%.
So if the lot was 30,000, it would be the same percentage.
Exactly, and so if that's something planning wants to take into consideration, you know, it makes sense. We may need to look at that and say, okay, maybe the lots that over 30,000 instead of 100%, we could grant, you know, it has to be 90%. It's going up incrementally on the square footage. I know the logic behind, and I know you were on as a commissioner, was to try to keep the estate size lots estate size. So that was the logic behind it.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Is there any questions for the applicant before we discuss?
I don't know, would the applicant like to make their case, or try to make their case, or make any comments, or?
Hang on a second, do we have a microphone for the applicant? And then will you state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I talk really loud, is this on, or? You hear me okay? My name's Adam Stein, I'm the owner of 5638 Mission Road. And you are correct, we do have a sport court in our backyard. And I think the history here is somewhat important, because when we purchased the house 5 years ago, the backyard had no grass, and it was an absolute mess. So we treated that like a blank canvas, where we wanted to be really thoughtful on how and what and when we did things. So the first thing we found was that sport court, and we really wanted to do that. And we've really enjoyed that through COVID. The second thing was actually a patio with a fireplace that when my wife got injured about a year ago, got scrapped because she rehabbed her injury through swimming. So that then kind of sparked the discussion of a pool, and that's when we started designing the pool to get the family outside, and her, where she works out almost every morning in the summertime, swimming in the pool. Our yard is big. By the way, we do have grass now. Let's back up it. Our yard is plenty big, and we've designed this in a way that's tucked right up against the house, and it's a fairly long but skinny pool for laps and exercise, as well as good double down for, obviously family time with my 4 children and things like that. So that's kind of maybe how I got here today with the idea. We were very aware of the permeable versus impermeable when we hired Barrett. And that's why we also hired a third-party engineer to design the underground retention. So we are very sensitive to that. But, and I guess this is the however, with us being on one of the 17 larger lots in Fairway, I wish you had the opportunity to see it, because we still have so much green space, to the point when you look out our back, you don't even see our neighbor. And when you look to the right, you don't see our neighbor. And when you look to the left, we have our garage, which blocks that neighbor. So it still is very park-like for a description. So thank you. I appreciate you guys considering it, and I'll turn it over to him for kind of the facts and things like that. So.
Right, and like Adam said, we're trying to be very respectful to the ordinance, and as I understand it, there's really 2 things at play here. One is the stormwater runoff is a big issue, which is why we tried to handle this with the stormwater detention basin, so that any new stormwater runoff that occurs after this project, if it were to move forward, would not, in theory, not leave the site. It would be contained and then percolate into the earth, so there would be no additional runoff tomorrow than there is today. And then the second half is sort of the aesthetic implications of hardscapes and things like that. So like Adam said, it's tucked up to, close to the house. It's blocked from the west by the garage. There's a tree line against the north lot, so you can't see it. The neighbors won't be able to see it. So I really don't know that it's going to have an impact on the neighbors, at least on what they can see. So that was our intent, was to try to keep it like that and mitigate the stormwater, so that's not an issue.
So regarding the stormwater, I have a question. Is this, like the analysis of the existing and the proposed, is that a recent study? And the reason I ask is because I know between the homeowner to the east, those gutters basically come down and go straight onto their property. And based on this drainage, it shows them going north or south. It doesn't show them going east. So I just want to confirm that this is current, because that doesn't appear to be representative of what's actually happening.
It was based upon a survey that we had gotten a couple months ago, and the engineering was completed just last month.
So we went and did a topo survey 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, and the engineers got that and did the report off of the topo.
Okay.
So is the retention basin that you're proposing, is that just going to be an open, like a dry pond in typical times? It's not going to be a gravel pit?
That's correct. And there would be planting material on, in the interior and the sides of it, it would be grasses and things like that.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to worry about it infilling with runoff debris and stuff like that over
Right,
a period of years?
right.
Okay.
Does it need to be maintained, though, for it to,
No more than your lawn would be.
okay.
Have you reached out to any of the neighbors at all for comments or feedback on this?
I have, I'm friends with the majority of them. Excitement's really what comes to mind, and they have young kids as well, and I think they, my understanding is it's better to have a neighbor with a pool than your own pool, and so they seem to be excited about it.
Well, you're going about this wrong then.
I know, I am, but yeah.
I think that's all the questions I have.
Appreciate the
Any other
opportunity to hear
questions? Okay, thank you.
us. Thank you.
All right, discussion?
I'm generally supportive of this, given the fact they've taken steps to include the retention pond, and it is in fact a larger lot size. It is pretty close to the house, so it doesn't create a huge footprint. It's pretty small, 12 by 40 foot, so I think this is a good case for an exception to the code. I agree with that.
Turn this mic off, I think that's the echo mic.
There we go. I'd agree with that comment as well, and I think that, this meets the intent of, keeping an estate-like lot, while not excessively using the green space.
I was gonna calculate real quick what the 68% of the square footage would be.
I think it was 25.
95?
176.
Oh. That's just 68%? Oh, so that's included in the report. You already addressed that. Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve the exception request as submitted by the applicant.
I'd second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Next item of business is item B, site plan for new single-family residence and exception to the front setback, 4612 West 59th Terrace, Fairway, Kansas, as submitted by Lonnie Shanks of JC Architects on behalf of Roger Payne of Red Jacket Properties, property owner. Basil, do you have a report, please?
Okay, yeah, the reporter submitted. As far as the background, it is a tear down and rebuild. We had some questions regarding the numbers. They did send us, and I sent you guys the updated site plan. But again, I mean, staff recommends approval pending the clarification as far as the site plan. Seems like the original, they were gonna remove the main tree up front. Now the resubmittal, they're putting back the tree. They're reshaping the driveway. We still have question regarding the grade and the elevation, so. And the numbers, I mean, our numbers compared to the site plan, compared to the watershed, we're getting three numbers, so as far as square footage and hardscape. So even with the updated, they did not correct the numbers, so, but we do recommend approval pending the corrections.
Any questions for staff? Is the applicant here to clarify? Will you please state your name and address for the record?
Can you hear me now? Hi, I'm Joe Elder. I live at 2705 West 51st Terrace, representing Red Jacket Properties. Of course, holidays and everybody's trying to pull together these numbers, and Basil and Kim, absolutely correct. So close, like, 1% off, what have you. Just got to bring the team together and pull that together. We have a huge tree. I know that Rick, they come out through Public Works with the arborist to assess this particular tree. It is one that is 2 inches inside the city right-of-way, would recognize a city right-of-way tree. However, it's one of the biggest trees in Fairway, and we want to save it. And I'm not sure they mentioned it, it juts the house over a few feet just to bring our apron from the front driveway approach into the garage, to swing it, as they mentioned, to alter the driveway to miss the tree. We were in the middle, kind of lined up equally on each side. It fits well, doing what we're doing. It does make the driveway, obscure as some of the driveways are, which for that, the city code and so forth. But it's a beautiful tree, and we went through the process thus far to elevate that tree through the arborist and trimming it and so forth. And we think it'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood for sure. But those calculations, the engineer, the civil engineer on the east side of the property has created a swale, and I think we just need to talk to him about that. It's, right now, the lot is pretty flat, and it travels, to the east, seems like, and to the rear. We're elevating the house a bit so we can bring it to the road and let the water run off, do its thing in the driveway as well. The swale on the side, kind of like representative what the fellows were saying right here a moment ago, talking about that pool, where it'd be it'd be just a regular mowing type thing. It elevates 6 inches, but it brings water off the front elevation to the street. It's going to the street anyhow, it just directs it even more on the east side. Everything from the east side across travels to the street. We're just trying to help out the guy who owns, well, the guy next door, who's very excited about the house coming down. It was dilapidated and in disarray, or bad shape. Any questions for me about that at all?
So I think we had a question about the grading around the perimeter of the property. What elevation is the grade at around the perimeter?
Well, you can see right there, it all comes off the front elevation. When you start working down the side, naturally the terrain, the topography, all that property falls to the north, across all those lots. As across the street to the south from our front facade, those houses receive the water behind them, to the south of them, toward their backyards. So we've got this water, typical runoff. Calculations from the civil engineer didn't increase anything. We're going to be able to capture more of the water that is running off the home versus before, and bring it to the front elevation and make that come to the curb. We have the ability now to bury gutters and things of that nature to get it closer and get it away, get it where it wants to go, maybe on the street, and get gone, and everything else will absorb like it normally would as far as through runoff.
So finished floor elevation is, can you confirm what that elevation is?
The finished floor elevation, finished grade elevation. The finished grade elevation, we're talking about grade 948, or are you talking about?
Well, want to confirm both of them. So what we're just want to confirm is what grade is versus the house. Is the house top of foundation significantly higher than the
Yeah.
grade?
So top of foundation is 448,
Okay.
and the height of your microphone right here from the house, 35 feet to the curb, is less than that. About to the green light from the top of foundation, and then we have got to slope to the curb.
So that's
And it's 947.
947 and a half?
448 to 947, so you're looking at a foot, so my shoe. And that's where, that travels, right now, it sits flat. We could have left it down where it's at. It sits flat, and all that water, which would still be acceptable if I'm not mistaken, all comes around and goes to the rear. We're trying to get some of it. We're breaking up that property to get some of it to the front. And then the old house that was there was just kind of an end-to-end ranch, gable down, gutter line across the front. It all went all the whole house, the whole footprint, everything went to the rear before, we demolitioned it.
So,
If
like,
I may
Go ahead.
interject, our concern is in the back where the finished grade is at 947, but the contour lines is 944. So if he's gonna slope the grade, I think the runoff should change from what the calculation that we're giving, that the elevation is at 944. Because the watershed analysis engineer is basing it on the 944 elevation. My concern, if you're gonna slope it, the water is gonna go to the property to the east. I mean, they're not showing it where it's gonna, they're hoping that swale next to the property line will maybe divert the water to the back.
yeah, and I think it's confusing because even at that patio, the finished grade is 947, but the contours shown through there is 943.
And
There's
that's
just
right.
something inconsistent about what's shown right now.
So we're talking about the rear. Our rear, as we slope down, our finished floor stays flat. There's no step downs in interior on the home. And then what Boz is saying right there with our finished grade, we'll have steps. Yes, I need to ask Robert and Mike to get on, Schmidberg to get on page with that. But he did actually take a swale down that right-hand side. You see those arrows down there, Basil?
Yeah, the new ones, but still, I mean, the clarification, what's been submitted does not show steps. So my assumption is your grade is 947 point whatever at that elevation next to the house. But then the contour lines, per the watershed analysis, the new site plans, he eliminated the contour lines, so we don't know what to follow.
Well, it definitely goes to the north because that swale line dictates it. I'm not sure that we have any bit of that roof line that would run off that would actually, 6 inches deep of water coming off the roof that would hit the yard and travel through the east to that neighbor right there. But again, clarification on some calculations. I think all of our green space, everything else is in footprint, and we're trying to save that tree up front by moving the house even further to the west, further away from the east, which makes a bit of a difference as well. And just natural absorption. And this is, Wessel is a civil engineer, but he also, we don't always get it perfect, and there's room for some questions being answered while Lonnie Shanks is finishing up his engineering on the actual structure itself before it's submitted to the city.
I think if there's clarification on the contours, because, I mean, they were removed on the new plan, so maybe that was purposeful
Yeah, that's
because the
the
grading's being redone. It's just unclear what the new contours are and how those tie into the existing contours. I think that's the piece that's unclear for us.
And I think probably a little bit of that has to do with what we've all been doing and hopefully doing for the last few weeks in preparation for a Thanksgiving, so I know Robert Wessel was out in Arizona at the time when he was working on everything as well. And Lonnie was down at Lake of the Ozarks.
Sure, yeah, we're just trying to help you understand so you can relay that back to them so they,
Oh, no, I think that we're on some email chain right here, and it's been a busy day for you guys for sure. But that we get asked about those contours.
Yeah, I got, those revised, I got them, I think he sent them maybe Friday or I just got them today. And just by looking at them, to me, I still have questions regarding him.
Yeah, the revised ones show less than the original.
As far as, the hardscape, they're within, they're not exceeding, it's just the elevation. If they're gonna keep it at 944, then it's gonna be 3 feet of concrete, and then they have to do steps or something to get to the elevation. Yeah, like the patio, I mean, the patio is the patio, and you're showing it flat with the grate.
Yeah, and that's the intent. It's not, there would be no intention to take something, and you walk out and you know, stumble down into your backyard. You know, you're gonna traverse over some sort of handrail system, whether it be 1, 2, 3, it'd be at least 3 steps here to get down there. We get step 1 out of the house onto the patio, raised area.
And then I guess to clarify, the swell, I mean, the high point's called out, low points are called out, but what prevents that water from just flowing past the swale? Is there gonna, it'd be good to see a high point on the fence line. So, cause the existing house next door is at 947. So we don't want water just flowing that way. So,
No,
once we see the contours, that would help.
Yeah, and it would be, without a doubt, and I'm not, you know, not trying to speak to the folks before, you're talking about taking up X amount of footage, you know, space with the pool. This is basic. This is really basic on, we've done it countless times, you know, where you just break it, basically, and you try to let it go and naturally flow, and then when it can't anymore, then it runs off and then runs around, because everybody brings their elevation, or they should try to, you know, we all have those homes, we gotta bring the elevation up to your home a bit, not in a ridiculous elevation or a manner, but to get water away from your house. Get it out 4 feet, you're good to go. You know, you're probably not gonna have any kind of leaching or water issues unless there's foundation issues.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion?
I think I'm good with the plan, the elevations, the materials all seem good. We just, if we approve it, we just need to stipulate that the grading plans be submitted and approved by Basil.
I think that would be reasonable. Rosal seems to have a good understanding of what they provided and what they haven't provided, and I think he'd be able to approve that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. I mean, if they show the contour and lines for the swale, and obviously when we do the inspection, we'll verify that.
Any other discussion, comments? Or motion?
I make a motion, we approve with the condition that Basil approve the elevations.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Next item of business is item C. Consider 4210, 4220 Shawnee Mission Parkway redevelopment, district tax increment financing redevelopment project plan, the project plan, finding of conformance with intent of comprehensive plan.
So there's a staff report in your packet that goes through the history of the project. This is a TIF Act procedural requirement. So the governing body has already established a TIF district, and the next step in the process is to consider a project plan. But before the governing body can set a public hearing or adopt a resolution to set a public hearing for the project plan, the Planning Commission has to review the project plan and find that it is consistent with the intent of the comprehensive plan. And as you recall, we went through,
Quick question. Did everyone else get this in their packet? Did you say there was something in the packet? Did I miss it?
it is on the, it's in the packet that's online, it's what's in front of,
Okay, I
Right-
did
right
not
there.
see it in my packet, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I didn't get a print of it either, I think it was
Okay.
just an omission. So you previously considered a potential amendment to the comprehensive plan to change the area of the property at issue from office park to community commercial. That was passed by, or recommended by this body to the governing body, and the governing body did approve that. So based on that amendment, this project plan does, it does conform with the comprehensive plan, but it has to be, again, this is a procedural requirement that it has to come through Planning Commission for review and a finding that it does meet, and that could just be made by motion.
Okay. So the office park, can you remind us, what are the requirements to meet the office? Or we changed it to community commercial, correct? What are the requirements? Again, we allowed up to 5 stories, but there was a few other items that,
It was to allow for, it's to allow for mixed uses that aren't just office-related, including the multifamily, community, commercial concepts like retail, restaurants.
are any questions?
That was what related to the rezoning. So this is just for the comprehensive plan. And the idea is, does the project plan and the project that's proposed in the project plan, is it consistent with the intent of the comprehensive plan for development of the city?
Okay. So any questions or discussion on that? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the submittal, that it does conform with the original concept that we previously passed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. You guys didn't have to say anything. All right, next item of business is item D, update regarding solar panel code language. So I apologize, I don't know if I saw this in the packet either.
Yeah, was there solar language?
Oh, okay.
I think it's great.
Well, unfortunately, we just got an application today for a solar panel.
On the roof
And
of
they
the
are
backyard.
on the roof, and they're putting it in different location. It's a house on, yeah, and they claim they got approval from the home association, Reinhardt.
Are they mounting it flush with their roof, or are they elevating it?
They're flush, they're about 10 inches above, but there are a couple of panels that are visible from the street. But again,
Structurally, I'm more worried about the roof blowing away, so, but understood.
Well, they don't anchor them very well. so
I was
those would blow
questioning the
away.
Yeah, but as
anchoring.
it adds additional, it takes
I was
something.
questioning the anchoring too. It's 60 millimeter, but then part of the 60 is gonna go through the bracket that comes with the panel. So you may have an inch of attachment to the,
Is it just
Probably
4
only half-inch
attachment,
sheathing anyway, so.
yeah, so I don't know.
just 4 attachment points? Or do you know?
No, there's multiple attachment. Each panel gets, and it's not uniform. It's depending where they feel they're gonna hit something, I guess.
You can have it affordable, or you can have an extra inch of threads, what do you want?
What did he say? Affordable, huh?
But yeah, I mean, if you go to street view and you see the roof layout, at the front, they're gonna have a couple of panels. To the side, you can see it from the street. But right now, again,
Well, I would ask for your recommendation. I don't want another little free library situation popping up where we try to work the code in for the applicant and then they get upset later and don't feel that we tried to accommodate them even though we did. So I don't want it to be, let's accommodate them and then later find out that they're still unhappy.
Yeah, so we're still doing some research on that, the different language and what was discussed at the meeting. So we hope to have that for the December meeting. I do apologize, we did not get that together.
Well, based on the discussion, was one of the important factors that it not be visible from the street?
yes. And I think Vice Chair Zwig did say that if it's not visible from the street, I think part of his recommendation is to go ahead and issue a permit. If it is or otherwise, then it needs to come to Planning Commission.
Because I could see that could become extremely restrictive if you were trying to get it to face the sun.
And this house, I mean, yeah, I mean, there are big trees. I think that's why they have it in multiple areas of the roof.
Hoping they can
Just
catch
to
a
get,
blink of
yeah,
sun
I
here.
think so. I mean, because there are really big trees.
It's always challenging too, depending on your roof slope. If it slopes the wrong way, then you've got to get
Well, yeah, you
creative.
can't put it on the north side of the house, that's the side away from the street, I mean, they kinda like shut your whole intent.
Yeah.
And also, I read those comments, I mean, I wasn't here last month, but the one about trying to restrict people from clear cutting their yards, I thought I don't know how the city could even approach that, I mean, cause it is an individual's house, and to say you can't cut your trees down, I mean, people do that all the time, I mean,
Yeah, and I think Commissioner Zwick mentioned, and that was one of the things that Council Kirschlich wanted to check in, was a type of solar easement, is that what it was?
That really wasn't, all right, do I need,
Solar easements, yeah. You weren't familiar with that, but he said some states, I guess, have it that kind of prohibit that, but I think at the end of the discussion, it was sort of like, that's not what the path we wanted to go down on that.
my understanding is that the concern was that I think Missouri may have a law that restricts a city's ability to prohibit solar easements or to regulate solar power. I'm not familiar with that law. I'm not aware of any law like that in Kansas. As far as a solar easement goes, if somebody wanted to get that, that's between the property owners. The city would not even be involved in that.
yeah, I don't see how the city could
No.
get involved in that, I mean, if somebody came to me and says, we're gonna make you to have a solar easement so you can't have trees, and I was like, I like trees, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, if a homeowner wants to have solar panels, obviously they're gonna need adequate sunshine for it to do its job. So that's up to them. I mean, I know there's lighting analyses that people can do to, figure out if they have enough sunlight on their property, to make one of these effective. But again, if they would need an easement from a neighbor, that's not something the city could be involved in. It'd be between them.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is sort of self-policing that, if somebody wants to cut down all their trees and put in solar panels, that's gonna, number one, it might raise their heating or their cooling costs in the summertime, and it might reduce their value of their property, so, not that the city could go in and regulate what trees you cut down, but it's kind of a self-policing, because there's an
Yeah.
incentive,
The same
to
thing with,
keep
if you
your
do
house
something really
looking.
ugly with solar panels on the front of your house, or
Yeah,
with a battery pack right next to the front entry, it's not,
yeah, there's a balancing act any homeowner would, figure in when they make those decisions, so.
but there are houses in Fairway up on Swanee, there's one that has a lot of solar panels on the front of the house, it's kind of a so what,
Well, and that's the thing, we don't have anything in our code right now to prohibit anyone from doing it. So we don't have anything so we've issued permits for those. We're kind of trying to catch up with the technology, which, as we're getting more and more calls, so, we'll make sure to get that to you for the next meeting.
Does this only address solar panels on the roof?
Huh?
Does it only address solar panels on the roof?
No, it was discussed at the meeting that the commission was against freestanding, because we did have that happen, and the neighbor is not happy about it. He feels like they're now next to a solar field. So that was one of the discussions. We had several, in the handouts, several other municipalities around us. Zoning Kirschlich wrote it for Mission Hills. And so we're gonna, based on what the commission's, their input, what staff kind of saw, like, we're gonna get that proposed language put together.
Well, and part of the issue too was that the information that was presented with other cities, they include it with other forms of alternative energy like geothermal, wind, and the suggestion was let's just do all of it, and that's a lot. So we were talking about, well, what's gonna work for the city as far as those other forms of energy go. Also something about battery pack, is that the right
Yeah.
phrase? Yeah, that I've never even heard of.
Which, and
I
I
could see
don't think
that.
that's gonna be an issue, you know, they're pretty, you can put them inside your garage, they're pretty flush. I mean, I don't think they protrude any more than a AC unit, you know? So I don't think those are gonna be too much to, you know, include in the language. But yeah, some other stuff started to get added to it that we hadn't looked into.
Well, it seems like the wind could just be a simple no.
I think most of that's gonna be the fact that they're gonna have height restrictions, so.
Yeah, I mean,
But by putting it in that, no, it's prohibited, that pretty well takes care of it.
What is the issues with geothermal? Okay, I was like, I have geothermal, I don't see a problem with it. And once it's in the ground, it doesn't bother anybody, I
yeah,
would
it's just
think.
during the construction that it's a mess. After that, nobody.
But I mean,
even
it's
knows.
my mess, it's no one else's mess.
When they're drilling and the dust is flying, some of the neighbors, you know, we've had some complaints on one that took 4 days. It is a little unnerving, I suppose, if you're next to a backyard for 4 days, but I don't know, I've not heard.
So you had geothermal?
I mean, that might have been my house they're complaining about, I don't know, but.
No, it wasn't. It was someone had that hit rock a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure that was their only problem too, hitting the rock.
Well, and I think a question that I had too was, okay, if you want to address all these different forms of alternative energy, do we want to make it a separate article and some of the supplemental provisions that's going to apply to all of the zoning districts? Or do you want to have regulations that are specific to each zoning district, the way that things currently are with setbacks, you know, dimension standards, all of those kinds of.
And I think if, I'll
Concepts.
refresh my, you know, I'll read the minutes again, but I think it was discussed on the commercial, they have to come to planning for everything. Anything that changes the site, they have to come. So we just need to have some planning would be evaluating anything they did. When we had some dishes at the 4210, 4220 that were up on the roof, all that stuff has to come to planning, a sign, anything. It was more, I think, the residential, we don't address that.
I
And
think
of course,
the-
that's low.
Generally, I was feeling the conversation was to give us something in guidance here, but, and most of which then are gonna have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
Because to your point, Ron, we don't, if somebody's being reasonable because of the angle of the sun, and it's not, you know, terrible looking, we're gonna approve it. They'll have to come here though, because writing every one of those scenarios in here was gonna be, that was, I think, where we were leaning on the
Yeah,
challenge.
but it would be good to have some basic guidelines, so they wouldn't put in a lot of effort and then come in and find out, no, no, you can't have a wind turbine, no matter how good it looks.
Yeah, and, you know, not specific to this one, but to the comment earlier from the first applicant on the large lots, I always feel conflicted when those come through, because it's not, where we're typically worried about the green space from a water standpoint, we're not in that case. However, I totally can understand having an estate-sized lot and, you know, the community feel.
So we've had, there's, you know, out of 1,800 households, there's probably less than 50 lots that are over the 30,000, but we do have them coming. It does provide planning and opportunity to evaluate on an individual basis. However, I get the viewpoint of the property owner. I've got 40,000 feet, you've got 30,000, but I'm held to the same exact square footage of hardscape. So perhaps, because it goes up incrementally up to 10,000, it's 60% green space. From 10 to 30,000 is 75. Perhaps we could tweak it, and from over 30,000, it has to be 90%. That gives them a 10% of that above 30,000 that they could, have hardscape. That's something, if we're tweaking the R1, we can put in. It's, but, it's just a matter of, does planning commission feel comfortable, or do you still want to see those big estate-sized lots on an individual basis? From staff's viewpoint, we're gonna support the code. And that was the angle I was evaluating at. And Boz, of course, wasn't here when we approved SUP.
I mean, regardless whatever we change it to, we're still gonna get applicants in here wanting to push it. I mean,
Yes.
that's,
Yeah, I
we've
can
had
see-
it many different ways, and no matter what, people still come and
Well,
ask
one
for
thing I didn't even
exceptions.
mention, I mean, the courtyard came at 1,500, but then when I did my research, they added about 5 feet on 2 sides. And I'm like,
Oh, gravel.
gravel.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, I I don't know that we need to change the code. I just think that's really helpful, because I know we've had at least 1 or 2 of those come through, and I didn't know that was the reason, and I thought that was unduly penalizing those folks.
Yes, and that's why I tried to make that clear, because I was supportive of a prior pool
Yep.
on a lot, and the difference was they had finished in, I believe it was end of 2018, the code changed, and even at that time, they had enough space for a pool, and then the code changed, and suddenly now they were maxed out. So
Oh,
on that particular one, I was supportive because they had left the space.
I think we'd be better leaving it like it is, even if we have to fight the exceptions, because I think if we raised it, I'd be more concerned about then people would be coming in with this massive house,
right. I
which
think
is,
that's the intent.
you know, and it would just overpower the site and the neighborhood, as opposed to get a reasonable sized house. Hey, if they want a pool, nobody can even see the pool from the street.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming to the commission is itself a bit of a deterrent. You know, if they say, oh, well, if I go over this amount, I've got to go to commission. If I stay under it, then it's automatically, it's compliant. So I think that alone is a good reason to keep it where it is, as opposed to raising it, because then it does govern that a little bit.
Okay.
Your work is done.
I just think for you guys, encourage people to come. We don't want, I don't want houses that big, right? But if it's patios and pools and, you know, things that are estate-like, take a look.
But yeah,
That's
again,
fine.
case by case basis, because we have had houses where it was basically their whole yard was pool and paving
Right.
and that,
That's not good either.
right.
Well, I
we wanna
just got a
avoid that.
call this morning, I mean, the house was built in 20, and now they want to come to enlarge the driveway. I mean, the driveway was 13 feet because they maxed out, so they narrowed the driveway. Well, now they recognize they're having issues.
You can't stay on the driveway.
It's a side entry
Oh.
to the garage, and they're running through the grass. I'm like, I don't know if they'll come to planning commission. They're thinking about it.
Well, and so from our perspective, we'll just keep providing some sort of reference of why we were supportive of one versus the other. And, you know, I had personally, you know, I didn't have an issue with the pool, I was just sticking with what.
Oh,
the
and none of my
county-
comments are on this one, by the way. I'm just commenting
Yeah.
in general.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about changing that then, and we will get the solar language.
In the meantime, since you did get an application for one, I would recommend that come to planning commission as requested the last meeting.
Okay, so that was something we were gonna discuss after the meeting with you.
I think that'd be appropriate,
Okay.
because it's something that's being discussed now. There's been, they've expressed an interest in seeing it.
Okay,
Do you agree that you would want to see it?
Well,
I mean,
I just want to make sure we're following, I mean, we need to approve the language first in that meeting before we can review it, right?
Well, you would be able to, or you could just say you want to hold off on even considering them until you approve it. Did you have a chance to see the samples that were in last month's packet?
No, I didn't, I
Some
don't
of-
think I looked at them.
They're pretty basic. It's, like Fossil mentioned, not visible from the street, not freestanding. They have to be attached to the roof.
Do we feel like this applicant is going to have issues then? Are there gonna be,
well, and, you know, I don't think, they can't get on the December 20th meeting because it rolls too early, so they'd be looking at January, so we'll
Okay.
have the language at the December meeting.
okay,
And so, for you guys to review, and so I think we'll be okay.
because I think that might be a little unfair if they were things that we would not approve, for them to watch us approve language and then immediately turn around and deny them. I think,
Right.
having the month, I think that would be good.
Yeah, well, what struck me is they have 2 panels, I mean, they have panels shown from the street, so, this application. So I don't know if,
Are they
the front one, they have two right there, which I don't know how it'll even get sun because there's a massive tree up, like way over, but, I mean, they did do the analysis. But then to the side, I mean, the house has, it's a valley, and you were talking about, well, the reflection. To me, it's like, well, this panel is gonna reflect to these because it's a valley and they're putting panels there. Then on the neighbor side, they have 7 panels. And then in the back, they have few. I mean, so, I mean, they are using quite a bit. They do have 2-access fire path to go to the ridge, so they are showing that. I did talk to Kim on those 7 panels. It seems like that side is not in I mean, the setback does not meet current code, but now they're gonna add that. Kim is under the impression is like, well, it's just like a new roof.
So the existing house, Boz was asking, it looks like it encroaches into the setback. He said by adding those panels on there, does that mean an exception? And that was something else we were gonna talk to our council on. And so I think maybe, would it be okay, Anna, to send out what they've sent just to the planning, don't reply all, but just so they could see if they, had thoughts?
I mean, actually, I do have one printout right now, if you guys wanna look at it.
Somebody move around.
Nobody's moving.
I guess the meeting's over, all right.
Yeah. Do you know how quickly they were hoping to get started, or is they're not?
Oh, yeah, they're, I mean, he was asking how long the process. I'm like, well, I think I did mention that it may need to go to planning commission, but then Kim says, well, we don't have anything, so we really can't even send it to planning commission.
That was my concern. We don't have anything in the code that says it has to go to planning, so that's why I was gonna ask you, can I really?
My gut is they snuck it in ahead of time, and they didn't know, I mean, it sneaked in.
Yeah.
But if it's not, ugly and horrible, I'd let it go.
You say you
Well,
got
I
a
mean,
picture
it
of
also depends on where you
I
live,
can-
right? If you live in Hawaii,
Stick
you
out
see
on
solar
the screen.
panels everywhere,
Right.
and it's not ugly, it's part of life.
Right.
So just because we're seeing them on a couple houses now doesn't make them ugly, it just makes them unique.
Yeah.
And maybe 15 years from now, they will be everywhere. So we have to be cautious that it's not just a personal opinion.
That's right.
And if they want to do it, then
Yeah, that's why I know planning wants them to come before them, but I didn't think we had anything that, for this particular application, that I could make them come to planning when there's nothing on the books, one way or the other, and we have approved others.
Probably find something.
Huh?
Probably find.
Okay.
But I'll
I
look.
just have one printout, but,
Do you think they generally would meet the spirit?
so they have
of
7 here, 2
neighboring
here,
cities?
6 here, 3 here, and you can see this from the street.
You
The museum
mentioned,
So they really don't have anything in the back.
If you
Commissioner
look at the
Smith.
ones we looked at samples on.
you mentioned you liked the Mission Hills one because it was pretty basic and just straightforward. But that one does prohibit mounting arrangements that project
And you
off
asked
of the roof,
regarding
and
the
it sounds like
mounting,
that's
so these
involved.
are
Oh, are these
That's
projecting
actually
not at the
important.
angle of the roof?
well, so projecting would be like coming off the roof, so
But I
then
mean,
the
they're
wind
just
it
level
could get
with
up
the
in there
roof
and tear them off. If they're mounted, even if they're
Oh.
mounted like 10 inches off the roof, if it's uniform, then I think that would
It's
be.
integrated into the
Yeah,
roof.
so then
Yeah.
that's more like a flush mounted versus, sometimes you'll see them and they'll be tilted up, like on a flat roof.
Mhm.
They'll be tilted up and the roof then can't take that additional uplift.
But the requirements aren't that, they're not, I mean, depending on how you wanna go. I know some cities, I believe some of the cities had more regulations than others.
Which
but I
way?
know,
Oh, that's north.
Again, Mission Hills, I did not actually write theirs, I'm just.
Well, yeah, you
familiar
wouldn't
with
get
their-
any sun
With their
in there,
code. Theirs is, it is, it's just that it's mounted, that it's integrated into the roof. All mechanical piping, electrical conduits, motors, and similar
is this?
items, must be concealed, general conformity with the building. So that's really basically, it's not all that.
So then, I mean, whether this code is in place or not in place, it shouldn't make a difference, for the most part.
It just depends on how specific you want to get with the regulations. Or how far into the weeds.
I tend to favor
That would be
generality,
a tough case there. 'cause it
particularly in the
just
early
kinda just
stages. I
random.
mean, as we get cases in front of us and we
You would
see what the
typically think
problems
they would
are,
leave it
then
gray.
That's
you know,
right.
we can see if we need something more in writing, but I think to start out more general, and just kind of build from that, so.
Is the city of Fairway gonna offer any rebates for people who put up electrical? What do they give it for plants?
I
Evergy.
believe Evergy does that.
Oh.
That's through Evergy.
All right, is there any further discussion on this? Okay,
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Oh, well, I
there's more on the agenda, Ron.
I've already made a motion that's in effect.
Want to make sure everyone knows the December meeting is the 20th. We moved that up, so it's before the holidays.
And are you gonna let this go through then?
They don't know.
Follow up with you
Right.
all tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
I need to look,
That's the
I need to look.
takeaway? Okay, I didn't know the takeaway.
Yeah, yeah. So.
We do have one application and another one, we're waiting on the watershed analysis for next month's meeting.
And solar.
Do we anticipate seeing any more on the redevelopment? If that moves forward, when would the next time we'd see it?
It would just be the final site plan that they have to submit.
And I don't know
Well-
that they can get that done with the meeting moving up early. Did you?
It doesn't have to happen now. They
Okay.
have, I mean, since the preliminary was approved, they have about a year, I think they have a year to submit the final.
Yeah.
So the preliminary we saw in, what month?
August?
I
August
thought
or
that was,
September.
I thought that was just to discuss the comprehensive plan, and then we had a meeting to discuss the rezoning, but I don't remember actually seeing the plan.
The
Yeah.
rezoning was along with
Yes.
the
That was?
preliminary site plan
Yes.
and a preliminary development
Yeah.
plan.
Okay,
So, and
all
the,
right.
yeah, and that went to council, so, but now that you had to do the development in.
This is just a TIF procedure.
Yeah.
Right, I guess, so in that meeting, we said we want to see like lighting, and we want to see
Right.
traffic, and so we
Right.
should see that in the final.
Right.
And that'll
Yes.
be potentially January then.
I don't know. I don't think.
Oh, I can't
mean,
imagine it'd be that fast.
I can't either.
Well,
I mean,
but everything else has gone pretty quickly, so.
if they want to pull the permits though, I mean, they've gotta have a final plan
Okay.
before they can pull a permit, so.
Well, they weren't talking, I think, weren't they in that report you sent, they were talking about starting demolition maybe in March? I mean, so,
Maybe soon then.
yeah, the architects probably haven't even started yet. On the final,
Okay,
knowing that bunch.
next item of business is, our next meeting date is December 20th, 2021. Last item of business is a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Gittens.
I second
Oh,
my own
was-
motion.
He's already made it,
I'll
so.
second.
All those in favor?
I
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.